Good morning, Praetorians. It's Alaric here with Invisionary once again. It's a little bit colder than it was yesterday here in Florida, but it's also in the morning. As you can see, I've got non-smoke vapor. So yeah, it's not a normal thing here. But anyway, just wanted to say thank you again for all of your contributions. One second. Coffee. The lifeblood of kings. Um, I wanted to say thank you really quickly to our newest backers. If I can get the screen pulled up here, one second. There it is. That would be Adam Rains, Gakol, Adam, two Adams, Chris, and Marina Makarevskaya. I apologize if I did not say that correctly. Also want to thank the guys over at Crowdfund This for their nice plug right at the start of their January 16th and through 17th video blog. That was quite cool when I got sent that message. So apparently the word is getting out about us. I also saw I think it was Wayne, I believe, posted a link about us in the Oculus Rift forums, which, as you may have realized through our various media, we do intend to support the Oculus Rift. It's a pretty cool technology, and you know, I like VR, so why not, right? But anyway, what I want to talk to you today about is actually kind of related to this. It's a little bit about the technology that we'll be using in Praetoria. Right off the bat, as you are probably have figured out by now, we intend to use the Unity 3D engine for our mobile production, which is actually what this presentation was produced in. It uses C#, just like the other engine we plan on using for desktop PC, Unigine. It's 32-bit, and it's a really fantastic platform for making mobile games. It has a lot of multi-platform support, and so, you know, great job over at the Unity guys. You know, wonderful product, great group of people there in the community, and you know, we will be utilizing that for our mobile side of things. The fact that both engines use C# is actually quite handy because we can utilize code back and forth, and the two engines really work well side by side together. It's kind of interesting that they both start with a U, Unity and Unigine. I'll put a link to the Unigine engine at the bottom of this video to showcase some of the really wonderful features they have produced in that engine. You may not have actually heard of Unigine before. They do a lot of real-time simulations. For example, they've worked with the United States government for putting together, you know, for example, full region simulations and some of the really advanced visualization software. But they've also brought their engine, which is fully 64-bit, into a realm of video games, and produced several games have been produced with it so far. And their own internal game that they developed is in fact a real-time strategy. So you know, we've developed a relationship with them over the last few months, and we feel very confident that this is the correct path for us to travel. As far as technology goes, when you look at the video, you'll see, I mean, it has an absolute fantastic list of built-in post-effects processing and GPU-based effects processing and so on. That's going to make Praetoria just absolutely gorgeous. But one of the other elements that sets Unigine apart from, well, pretty much every other engine out there is they actually wrote their own 64-bit physics engine. Now, to the uninitiated, that may not sound like it makes a big deal, or makes a big difference. It is a big deal. But the reality is this is actually a very significant thing. They currently have it running off of the CPU, but they're working this year, so before our game was released, it'll actually support both CPU and GPU processing. Now, just so you know, that running off the CPU is not a big deal. That's actually, so much of the game is going to be running off the GPU. Running off the CPU isn't going to hurt it. But when they're finished writing the code segment that allows it to run off of both, will be just basically allow the game to offload physics wherever it needs to go. Now, you may be asking, why is this important? The reality is, as we've said, we're creating 2-scale planets, period. What that means, though, from a technical standpoint, is to create a planet that's a spherical world that's 2-scale, you have to have a numeric system that can actually keep track of where something is in space at every point. So, you know about your coordinates X, Y, and Z. In a 32-bit environment, which is actually any game that has PhysX in it, I'm sure you're familiar with the term PhysX, you see that little logo on it, PhysX. That means that that game is 32-bit. And the reality is most of these games are designed in 32-bit, for 32-bit, running off of a 32-bit physics engine. And for most of these things, it's actually suitable. It works just fine. But when you start getting into these really large data sets, where you have, for example, a real Planet 2 scale, the way 32-bit and 64-bit work is they actually it works exponentially. For every digit you add, you're getting a massive region of possible coordinates within the game world that can exist. Within a 32-bit system, when you create a Planet 2 scale, you start running into a situation where objects in the world will go beyond what's considered the maximum coordinate. So for it to keep track of where something is, where it's going, and so on and so forth, things start to become very complicated. That's actually one of the reasons why in our mobile games, all of the planets will actually be reduced down to a much smaller percentage of the real scale. And in the mobile games, people will be able to build buildings, or cities we'll say, but they won't be doing it on an individual micromanagement of each individual building like in the MMO. In the mobile side of things, everything will be much more oriented around the tap and click section, so we don't really need the full-blown scale of a planet and so on. But when you get into what we really want to do and where we're going with Praetoria for the desktop, when you start adding in that 64-bit capability, you have the ability to put an entire planet, plus the moon, plus space around the moon, and in some cases even in the entire solar system, all in one actual map. Now, you can't do that in 32-bit, period. You can barely get beyond the edge of the planet before you start leaving the coordinate system, and that's a scaled down planet. When you talk about a full 2-scale planet, you're getting outside of the coordinates right off the bat. So it complicates things. And by them writing their own physics engine, we're not reliant on the limitations of PhysX, whereas PhysX cannot run in a 64-bit environment. It literally cannot handle calculations for large data sets. It just immediately falls apart and the physics go out the window. So this is one of those key advantages to going with the Unigine platform. And like I said, from an effects level, it is just an absolutely gorgeous engine, and like I said, I'll link some videos down after this video below it to showcase some of the power of what we're looking to get. And just to remind you, this the two technologies that we don't have licensed currently that we really need to license, and we need your help to get there, is in the upper mid, or I guess the mid-range of our tier goals. It's just around the $1 million marker. If we can get to that level, we will have the ability to license both Voxel Farm and Unigine, and then that's when we start the desktop PC platform and start heading toward the MMO. And the reason those exist right in that bracket is because they are quite costly. These are not, the difference in price between Unigine and Unity is, several digits. So, you have to add a couple more zeros on there to talk about the difference in the pricing between the two engines and environments. But on another thing, like just since I mentioned it, Voxel Farm, what this actually does, and if you watch the video all the way to the end, you actually saw part of what Voxel Farm is capable of. The nice part, or really nice part, about both companies, Voxel Farm and Unigen, is the guys who actually run these companies and are the developers are super awesome. I mean, so far we have just built an absolutely fantastic relationship with them. They're really into the product that we're developing, and they, want to work with us to actually refine the features of their engines to better suit what we need. So we have a really good relationship. We know that going forward with these technologies, we will be able to not just say, okay, well, we can operate within the limited confines of what their engine is capable of, but knowing that going forward, if we say, hey, we need certain features added, that they'll be able to say, okay, well, let's, develop a plan and let's see how we can actually execute this and get those types of features added to the engine. So in the long term, going with these particular companies is giving us like direct access to the engine development side of things. So for a company who's not 100% in-house engine developer, and some companies out there can afford it. They got billions of dollars in budget. For us, that's actually a fantastic thing because going forward, we will know that we can actually get the features we need without having to say, hey, we need to actually develop this engine in-house. We can actually let an engine developer who specializes in that field develop the features that we need. So I just wanted to kind of touch base on that a little bit. Now, to expand a little bit, I want to talk about Voxel Farm. Some of you probably have absolutely no idea what voxels are, and maybe the video kind of clued you in a little bit. Maybe it didn't, I don't know, but I just kind of wanted to talk about it briefly. Essentially what a voxel is, it is a three-dimensional pixel. Right? I know, you have to think about that. A pixel is a little square, right? And think about a world that's filled with three-dimensional pixels. Now, the difference between, say, like Voxel Farm and another more different voxel engine is the algorithms they use to produce a voxel. Most voxels are squares, whereas Voxel Farm is not. It uses what's called a marching tetrahedron algorithm. So essentially we end up with organic voxels. Voxels that can take on many different shapes and can be in extremely different sizes. Now, to give you an example of a game that's become quite popular that utilizes a voxel-like technology is Minecraft. For those people who've played Minecraft or know what Minecraft is, essentially it allows people to go in and put all these blocks in the world, and they can kind of make their own creations. Now, I don't believe they used voxels for that, but I believe that certain companies have kind of trying to take that, and I believe even Minecraft themselves is trying to move toward voxels with it. But essentially it's the same type of principle, but on like on steroids. It's like to the nth degree. So what making our planets actually exist within this voxel technology enables players to literally do things that you will not see happening in any other kind of game. You'll be able to actually dig into the ground, dig a tunnel into the side of a mountain face, and build a base inside of the mountain. I mean, you have to think about that for a minute. Even in this, we're not going pure RTS, as you know, but even in a pure RTS, you can only build on the surface. That's the limits of what you're actually capable of doing. Well, in using voxels, the ground is deformable to where a player can actually, like I said, dig a tunnel directly into a mountain, create a complex cavern system, have, platforms that raise up and go from, deep down underneath bases to deploying, like aircraft right out of, the side of a mountain. So just that ability really opens up the possibilities for players when they're developing things like bases and so on and so forth. Now, just to clarify, like I said in the main video, we are not going with a Minecraft style of editing for the voxel world. You have to use actual tools. For example, if you want to dig, a tunnel into the side of a mountain, you're going to need something like a drill or, a actual technology with digging and drilling and blasting capabilities to move the voxels, to move the mountain out of the way to get inside. And that, is going to be used, that same element will be used in how people gather minerals and so on and so forth. So, the whole concept of how crafting works in that respect is very, very, very different than, hey, look, there's a little rock sticking up out of the ground, let's go click on it, and now I've got, more rocks in my inventory. People are going to be prospecting planets using, basically scanners to see where the minerals are. That they'll just be running around like a person, on foot kind of deal, flying around. Hey, let's land here. Let's check the minerals. Oh, hey, look, it looks like there's something rich, a rich deposit over here. Let's call in the fleet. And then they'll have a big mining barge come in and set down and have all these tools and actually set up a mining operation, kind of like in the Aliens movie or something to that effect. Or they'll have a little colony that, what they call a shake and bake colony that'll set up with, these temporary deployable, buildings that can then, deal with mining and extracting all the ores, loading them into the transports, and shipping them back to the civilization that they're working for. Now, having said that, I hope that helps you to better understand what voxel is. We're also utilizing voxels to power our crafting system. And there's several examples of that in our main video. One second. But basically, Voxel Farm has, the developer Miguel, Voxel Farm, has done some very, very interesting things in that he figured out how to make voxels convert between a voxel state and a typical what you would consider polygon, which is your standard mesh and that you're used to in a video game, and the ability to swap between these things in real time. So what this is going to allow players to do is actually alter the appearance of the things they make, what they're crafting. So this takes, crafting to a whole new level in the way, the game will be played. And I'm quite excited about how that's going to work out and to see what people make with their freedom. So I don't want to spend all day on that, but I hope you get the idea, and that helps explain a little bit. But now I want to go to a question I got this morning. Let me pull it up here. By KRM398. He basically says, I play games like X Series from EgoSoft and Eve, and they give a lot of freedom, and I play as either a salvager or a mercenary, freelance, or pilot. My end game is different from others. I don't need or want a kingdom, just a fleet that follows me, and we travel the universe for hire. That's a different idea of gaming from the I want to be king ideas many have. But that's what freedom in gaming means to me. Buying, selling, and capturing ships and gathering loot and resources after battles and from asteroids, like a persistent Battlestar Galactica type thing. After we wander until we find a place we decide to stay at, and then maybe a kingdom, maybe. So, I just wanted to address that question because it's an absolutely fantastic question, and to be completely honest with you, it is so important that people understand that in Praetoria, the civilization side of things, the whole civilization sim, that's a ground level idea that's from day one we've taken into consideration, giving players the ability to go from wherever they want to actually running their own empires and cooperatively doing this. But for individuals who have no interest in that side of things and want to be your freelancers, your, ships, captains for hire, pirates, all that kind of stuff, these individuals do not have to, in any way, shape, or form, become loyal to either an organization or a civilization. Now, they'll probably use an organization for the terms of if they want to have, like he had said, a fleet that follows him around and does things like salvaging after battles and so on and so forth. So that would actually work within an organization, but that organization does not have to be loyal to an empire. So the organization is just essentially a way of grouping players together like a guild. All right, and then those, and mind you, it could actually be one player with no extra players. It could be just one player with their family dynasty and their what we call sphere of influence, or AIs who decided to team up and follow them. And basically, they would be their own group and their own organization that can travel around the stars and scavenge things, attack ships, and pirate. Steal the belongings inside of the ship. Go from civilization to civilization, buy low, sell high, You know, I gave an example of, you know, the big game hunters in one of the FAQs, and you know, the concept of even just being able to travel from planet to planet and hunt the native species and trap them and then sell them on various planets. So there's, you know, a complete range of what players should be capable of doing. Just to clarify that, when a player starts the game, okay, they're basically going to have a pool of points, and they'll be able to spend those points on either creating a unique species or using an existing species template that could come from an empire they're joining from one of their friends, or using the Empire Finder interface, or just one of the existing templates and start their own sort of like, you know, uh, destiny. And once they've done that, okay, they basically pick their archetype and so on. They have these points that they can spend on evolutionary development or technological development. And what that does is basically gives them the ability to pick how evolutionarily advanced their species is. Essentially, let's just take, you know, let's go on to the extremes here. If you spent all of your points in genetic mutations and genetic manipulation, your genetic advancement, excuse me, you would end up with something kind of like the Tyranids from Warhammer 40k, or the Alien from Aliens, or the Zerg, or, you know, any one of these kind of highly mutation-based species, to where they evolve quickly and they have tons and tons of natural abilities, running on walls, infrared vision, night vision, you know, acid spitting, all kinds of crazy different things that will be available under the genetic advancement tree. Now, on the other side of that, you have the technological advancement tree. And let's just, again, sticking with the extremes, say that someone spends all of their points on the technological side of things. If they spend all of their points on the technological side of things, essentially what they have is an artificial intelligence species, something that exists without a body, without an organic form. And this, using this concept, should allow players to get the exact feel and point where they want their species to be. Now, I got another question from, I believe, let me check really quick here. Yes, it was Wayne G, who had asked the question of, can he essentially create like an aquatic species and some really interesting things like argon-based and you know, non-carbon-based life forms and so on and so forth. And I just wanted to say, we may not include every last option on day one. We're going to keep adding to the game over time. But the answer is yes, that will be possible at some point. Once we get, you know, again, if we get a huge budget right off the bat, if this thing blows up and we end up, you know, with a fantastic, like if you look at our Kickstarter campaign, the stretch goals has in there, it's what's called the Extreme Species Designer. That is actually what we're referring to, is taking it, you know, we're going to have essentially the species designer has two different tiers. There's, or actually, no, I think it's three different tiers. It's basically the basic species designer, then kind of a more advanced species designer, and then an extreme species designer. I just have to verify this, whether it was 3 or 2. I believe it's 3. Yeah, it's 3. Yeah, okay. Yeah, basically, they'll have the ability over time, as you know, there's a species creator, and then there's the, yeah, okay, extreme species designer is the way it's listed, tier 6, phase 2. And basically, what the idea with this is that, you know, as time goes on, as we make more money, have more people join the team, have more time to spend on these different systems, we will keep adding more possibilities for genetic mutations and so on and so forth. But when a person goes in and they create their species, the options that they pick will actually determine the planet of their origin. Essentially, if you create an aquatic species, the part of his question was, you know, will you get an aquatic planet? And the answer is yes. If you create aquatic species, it'll figure out that, hey, because you picked this, 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 and this is an aquatic species, therefore the planet of origin needs to be in a highly aquatic world. Whereas if you pick something that is, you know, completely on the opposite end of the spectrum, maybe it's, you know, something with an exoskeleton versus an endoskeleton. It may end up on something more like, you know, a very different type climate, like, you know, an arid climate or so on. So there's a lot of possibility in how it's going to work, but the engine will actually figure out, the creation process will determine, since you picked certain options, it'll give you a list of various types of planet choices that are available for it, and then the player will be able to say, yes, I want that type of planet, and then it'll generate that kind of planet in the world, or find that kind of planet in the world, depending on which game, which of the various games in the series you're playing. So I just wanted to cover that. Those are two very good questions that I got in last night, and I figured, hey, I might as well talk about it this morning. But one second here, let me grab my coffee. It's a little cold out today. Yummy. So, I hope that kind of answers some of you guys' questions. You know, yeah, you will be able to be the privateer. You will be able to fly around the universe and have absolutely no connection to a civilization. And the species that you create, you have a lot of options in how you go about doing that. And it'll actually affect the planet of origin for that species. Basically, the various reward bonuses that we have from the bronze level up include bonus points for the species and dynasty, family dynasty creation process. Now, just to touch on that really quickly, it's going to be very much a boon, or, you know, very beneficial to anyone who picks one of those accounts, if they, especially if they want to go at it solo. When two or more players decide to team up before creating or actually starting the game, they'll be able to link their accounts together using a serialized, you know, code kind of method of linking their accounts together, and then cooperatively create the starting point. So let's say that, like, for example, a guild decides that they're going to move their entire guild over to the game in one shot. Now, in a typical game, it would mean everyone starting at level 1, and, you know, they have to message each other in the game system, and after they've rolled their characters, and try and synchronize where they are and invite each other to the guild and all this kind of crazy stuff. Well, in our game, totally different. They'll be able to manage this from their account page before they ever even log into the game. And once they do that, essentially they'll determine who's the leader and who has different permissions for the creation of the empire. Once they do that, each player will have the ability to donate, essentially choose how many points they want to spend on the species creation versus how many points they want to keep for their individual family genetic profile. There will be a bonus, essentially a way where it multiplies when people are pooling their resources together versus when they're solo, to try and keep it a little bit more balanced. But the idea here is, if an entire guild with, who knows, 50, 100 people all pool their resources together, they will be starting out at a technological or a mutation level that is equivalent to, say, someone who started the game and played the game for quite a long time and has, you know, built up slowly some of these different options, trying to go at it solo. So an empire that's just joining the game isn't going to be at such a detriment that they will be like, you know, hey, we've got to spend, you know, 2 years trying to catch up to other guilds. You know, if they have, you know, a bunch of players, those points will give them a giant boost forward in where they actually are starting in the game, as far as what's available, what options they have from day one. So, you know, we've tried to take into consideration these different concepts of how important it is for players to be able to play together and get the exact effect out of the game that they're looking for. You know, everyone has their own idea of what they want out of a sci-fi universe, whether they want to be explorers, they want to be peaceful, they want to be warmongers. You know, there's lots of possibilities. So I just wanted to kind of cover that a little bit and explain, so, you know, people would have a better idea of, you know, what the possibilities actually are. Another thing I want to talk about is, and this is probably going to be the last thing I talk about here. I don't want it to go quite as long as yesterday. I went a little bit longer than I normally would plan on. But basically, one of the things I want to talk about is the fairer sex. And by that, I mean your girlfriend, your wife, your significant other, who's a non-gamer. Let me just clarify that, because there are quite a few women out there who will flat out knock you on your ass, badass pilots, marksmen, you name it. They're hardcore gamers and they rock, and power to them all. But this is not aimed or directed toward those particular people. We just call those gamers. We don't distinguish gamer and female gamer. Those are just gamers who happen to be female versus gamers who happen to be male. But for the moment, I want to talk about the non-gamers, or the very, very casual female gamers. What a lot of people refer to as girl gamers or whatever. Now, in Praetoria, we've taken, like I said, this is aimed at adults. We understand that you have a job, you have a life, you probably have a wife, you may even have kids. Yeah, you may have grandkids. We're kind of aiming this at that Star Trek generation, and let's be realistic. If you grew up on the original Star Trek series, you probably have grandkids. But that's as much our demographic in this game as, someone who's in high school and, is growing up on modern sci-fi. So, to expand on what I just brought up here, the way Praetoria works is we won't be able to deliver every last aspect of what we intend on day one. I mean, over the time of the lifetime of the series, we will keep adding. Like I said, it's a horizontal progression system, so we'll keep adding to what's possible. But right from the beginning, we have intended to include the ability for players to do more than just wage wars against each other. And I want to direct your attention to the simulation side of things for a bit. I talked about the flight simulation and so on and so forth, but let's look at, for example, character aging and marriage and reproduction. And within an empire, the concept of having a political agency or office or organization, a civilian organization, a military organization, and so on. If you have those girlfriends, those wives, who constantly say to you, get off the game, come to bed. I'm sure you've heard that, and it's probably the most dreaded thing you hate hearing, is get off the game, spend time with me, because it means they're basically getting annoyed that you're ignoring them and playing games. And with a game like this, chances are you're going to want to probably play it every minute you're not working. At least I hope. I know I will be. But that doesn't do real good for relationships, right? Now, by understanding that, we have set out with a mission ahead of us, and we've made some very serious strides toward this goal in our system designs. But as we add more members to our team, one of the things that I specifically plan on focusing on is getting a group of female developers who will really be able to understand and tap into what a woman wants, who may not necessarily be your hardcore ass-kicking gamer, who doesn't really care about combat, who doesn't care about blowing things up and so on. And by adding the simulation side of things in, the characters, like I said, have an AI. They have, within that AI has needs and wants and a personality and an alignment. And those various elements working together based on their status and so on is going to determine their overall morale. Now, that has two different major implications to it. One being morale will affect troop performance in the field. So if you keep your soldiers on the front lines for long durations, eventually they'll wear down and be less effective than if you rotate your soldiers out. That's the primary reason why the system exists, is we want people to actually say, hey, these soldiers have been in the field for a long time, it's time to send them to that R&R planet. I mean, come on, Star Trek, you guys know what I'm talking about. But we want people to have a reason to say, hey, here's a peaceful species that has this utopian, beautiful garden-type planet that has almost no defenses, they've got natural resources, but it's essentially a paradise. Now, if you are, let's say you're the lawful good kind of player and you believe in protecting the weak, then chances are you'll forge an alliance with that civilization and you'll protect them from the dangers of the universe, possible invasions and so on. And that's fantastic. But even for the people who aren't necessarily lawful good, they may want to offer the same kind of option to protect this kind of a planet rather than just straight out saying, let's destroy, kill everything, because they'll need a place to send their soldiers to relax, to recover from the stress of ongoing wars and conflicts. So like I said before, the types of buildings in Praetoria are not going to be just like a standard RTS where you have barracks and you've got shipyards, and that's going to be there. You know, your planetary defense systems and communication networks and all that crazy stuff's going to be there. But you're also going to have civilian buildings that are going to range from apartments, actual living quarters, to stores and different types of things, like, for example, an arena. Now, if you ever played SimCity, and I mean like old school, SimCity, whatever. If you created a city and you were running it as a mayor, you had to manage residential, commercial, industrial, and you had to add things like statues and stadiums and all these kind of different additional things in there to try and keep the people happy. Now, while we're not going to be copying their system by any measure of the word, the same kind of idea, the same ideology is going to be taken into consideration here, that the civilization will have an overall morale, and the higher the morale is, the higher production will be. The higher production will be, the better your military will be, and so on. So let's say, getting back to your significant others here, who may play a game like The Sims or SimCity, but have no interest in blowing things up. Let's just take this from, like, I'll give an example. You and all your buddies, your guild, you've been gaming together for 10 years. You all have lives at this point. You've got girlfriends. You have a hard time getting your girlfriends to play things like StarCraft. Well, in this environment, in this game, you will be able to, hopefully, if we do this right, and we get the right advice from the right team members when we add them, we'll be able to show your significant others a side of the game that will interest them. Just one crazy off-the-wall topic that's a very, very, very serious idea here is a lot of women like playing matchmakers. And provided you didn't make your species into some crazy, grotesque, nasty thing, that's something you may have to take into consideration if you want to get your girlfriend to play the game, is to make something that's, at least somewhat appealing to them. But I'll leave that in your hands to decide. But basically, let's say you want to get your girlfriend to play the game. They will have civil engineering options for developing parks and, for example, even taming and training and making, zoos and pets and, roller coasters and, a theme park, essentially, being able to create an actual theme park. That is one of the things that we plan on doing. I mean, if you've ever played, any of those theme park simulator type deals, they're not actually that hard to do. And with all of the technology we're doing with player creation tools, it's right in line with what we're doing already. So there will be this whole non-combat side to civilization building that we hope will enable you to get your girlfriends, your wives, your significant others to play the game with you and actually be helping you. Not just like they're there taking up space and you're like, hey, at least she's not bugging me, but actually be contributing to the same end result as what you are working toward. So you have a guild and you've got all these guys in the guild, and they're, you got some girls in the guild too, and they're all, combat oriented, but then they've got their significant others who are not, that hopefully they will be able to say, hey, I can play this, I can do this, I can go play matchmaker and make all these different AIs fall in love and go on dates and, go visit theme parks that they may actually have designed themselves. And on top of that, there's, a lot of women are very astute businesswomen. And because of the fact that we're doing organizations and the AI will have organizations, there's a very good possibility that they may be the ones who end up running your civilian corporations. And helping to develop all kinds of things that we add over time. Like I said, I'm not going to promise the world and say, oh, well, we're going to have all these different advanced systems in right on day one. It's going to come. You just have to be patient with this, but it'll come. We will keep adding it. We're going to make sure that there's a little bit in each of the areas to start, and a lot in certain areas. But in this particular area, it's going to become, it's kind of like a side thing that's very important to us, but it's going to get developed on the track as we're actually in full swing in development and release the game and so on. Now, speaking of releasing the game, one thing you may be wondering is pricing. What's our concept of this thing of digital rights management? That's a big question, and I'm sure a lot of people are probably wondering, what are we going to charge for this MMO? Heck, what are we going to charge for a mobile game? What are we going to charge for a PC game? How do we view the DRM topic, digital rights management? And provided that we have the correct funding, that we can essentially afford to, we hope to be able to release the mobile game completely free. That's no money needing to be spent on it whatsoever. Because what better advertising tool is there than a completely free, amazing game? And if it's one of those things that we are releasing as, because it's literally a scaled down version of what we're already doing, it's essentially has a lower requirement for assets and resources and everything else. Essentially, it won't be a large endeavor for us to say, hey, we're releasing a mobile game. It's just a stripped down version of the MMO. So in the PC game, we'll have a lot, like when we get into the MOBA and things like that, there will be additional features and so on beside the MMO. But I don't want to spend too much time on that, because really we're focusing on the basic goal and the ultimate goal, because you can kind of figure out in your own mind, if we're planning on releasing MOBA and single player, what that means based on the kind of series that we're creating. But basically, our idea for DRM policies is we don't believe that we can ever beat the pirates. Just put it right out there. It's not going to happen. There are companies with multi-trillion-dollar yearly net profits who cannot stop piracy, period. So as an independent developer, and as a developer moving forward, we're not even going to try. It's completely pointless. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of resources, it's a waste of money, and it does absolutely nothing to further development of the game. There's better things we can spend our money on. So what does that mean exactly? Basically, what that will mean for you as a gamer is we plan to give away the single-player games essentially for free. As long as we can afford it, we're just give them away for free completely. When it comes down to it, though, what we will have is an integrated account system online that players will link every game we release to. And each game in the series, whether it's for the mobile, it's the single player, or it's the multiplayer, or whatever, all of the individual games in the series will have the ability to carry over, because they'll have essentially a timeline of when they're released, carry over your various accomplishments from one game to the next. And all of this will be done through an online account system. So essentially, yeah, you can download the game, you'll be able to play it for free, and maybe, like I said, as long as we can afford it. We may have to charge for some things, but we're not going to go out of our way to try and prevent people from stealing the game. It's a losing endeavor. But let's just go with the concept that we give it away. If you want to be able to carry over your accomplishments from one game to the next, that process will be done through the online system. So you say, okay, well, what does that mean? And I can't get into the details. There's a lot of stuff that's connected to story and lore, and I don't want to give away anything specific, but you will be able to carry over your story from the first game we release all the way over to the MMO. And believe me, that there are things that will make it so that it's perfectly balanced and does not have any kind of negative impact on the online experience, but it will be possible for players to carry over their saved games from one game to the next in the series for the entire life of it. And we'll be doing that through the account system. So essentially, we're going with what we call a reward system for people who buy the game, rather than a punishment system for people who steal the game. Because the more we try and punish someone for stealing the game, the more we punish the people who played the game, or who paid for the game as well. So that's kind of our philosophy on the DRM side of things. Well, anyway, this has gone on a little bit longer than I thought it would, but I wanted to cover several different topics, and I hope this has helped you to better understand our vision and what we have planned. And again, really excited. And let me just go ahead and One more time, give a little shout out to our most recent backers. That's Marina Makarevskaya. Ooh, that's a heck of a name to say. Makarevskaya. I hope I said that right. Chris, Adam Gakol, and Adam Rains. Thank you very much for your contributions. You guys have qualified for the free update or upgrade to the next tier above what you spent, just like everybody else so far. And just a reminder, let all your friends know that, for the next roughly 24 hours, a little bit more than that, if they sign up too, they will also qualify for that. Again, that goes till the midnight on the 20th Pacific Standard Time. And as long as you make your initial backing pledge within that time period, whatever you end up spending by the time this campaign is done, let's say you upgrade your account later, as long as you got in this first period, you will get a +1 to whatever it works out to in the end. So I just want to say thanks again, and look forward to speaking with you guys quite regularly. I'll try and do quite a few of these different video blogs and updates, so we have a good communication and can kind of share our vision and some of the different things that's just kind of boring to type in walls of text for people to read. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, and till next time, this is Alaric with Invisionary signing off.